All right, folks, getting ready for those UPSC exams.
Definitely a crucial one.
Well, we're diving deep into a topic that's almost guaranteed to show up. The roles of Subhas Chandra Bose and Rash Behari Bose in India's fight for freedom.
Not just listing dates and events.
Nope, we're going beyond that.
We'll be analyzing their different approaches.
Their strategies.
And their lasting impact.
Think of it this way. This is all about what separates a good answer from a great answer on your exam.
You've got to understand those nuances.
Exactly. And what better time to explore all of this than right now? Parakram Diwas is coming up on January 23rd.
Oh, that's right.
And this year's celebration at Barabadi Fort, Subhas Bose's birthplace, it's going to be especially meaningful because it also happens to be the 80th death anniversary of Rash Behari Bose.
Wow, that's a pretty unique convergence.
It is. It gives us a chance to look at their legacies together,
And see how their individual choices really shaped things.
Shaped history. Okay, so let's start with Subhas Chandra Bose.
Sounds good.
Born in Cuttack in 1897.
Right.
His upbringing was this interesting blend of English education and traditional Hindu values.
Interesting.
And then he goes to Presidency College in Calcutta.
Ah, a breeding ground for revolutionaries.
Absolutely.
Even in his early years, though, you can see the influence of figures like Ramakrishna Paramhansa and Swami Vivekananda.
Oh, interesting.
Proponents of spiritual strength and self-reliance.
Right.
That early exposure to ideas of resistance, spiritual, anti-political, it really shaped his path.
And he excelled academically, too. Passed the Indian Civil Service exam in 1920.
Wow.
But here's where you really see his dedication. He resigns in 1921.
From the ICS.
Yeah. Many would see that as a huge sacrifice, giving up a secure career.
Definitely.
For him, the struggle for independence came first.
Yeah, recurring theme throughout his life.
And that same year, 1921, he meets Gandhi for the first time.
Oh, this is a big one.
This meeting is so important for understanding the whole ideological landscape of the freedom movement.
You've got Gandhi, the champion of nonviolence, and then Bose, who's becoming more and more convinced that a more militant approach is needed.
It's a debate that still goes on today, doesn't it?
It definitely does.
Fast forward to the late 1930s, Bose is elected president of the Indian National Congress, not once, but twice.
Back to back.
He's pushing for complete and immediate independence.
Which was
more radical than the Congress's approach at the time.
Much more.
So naturally, this causes some friction.
It leads to a major rift within the Congress.
And culminates in Bose resigning in 1939 after he defeats Gandhi's candidate for the presidency.
UPSC aspirants, pay attention. This split is key why.
It really shows those internal tensions.
And the growing impatience with the pace of change.
Bose goes on to form the Forward Bloc,
aiming to unite those radical left-wing factions of the Congress.
But then things take a dramatic turn in 1940.
What happens?
He's arrested for his political activities.
Oh, wow.
And this is where we see Bose's strategic brilliance.
And audacity.
In 1941, he escapes house arrest.
No.
It's a clandestine journey across continents.
This escape alone says so much about him.
It does. He travels in disguise through Afghanistan, reaches the Soviet Union,
amazing,
and eventually ends up in Nazi Germany.
Now, for someone prepping for the UPSC, this decision is crucial to analyze.
Absolutely.
Why would Bose, a dedicated nationalist, seek help from Nazi Germany, a regime known for its oppressive ideology?
It highlights his pragmatic approach, right?
Yeah.
He's willing to do what it takes.
Even if it means aligning with powers whose values he may not share.
It's a reminder that history is rarely black and white.
And that leaders often have to make difficult choices.
This also shows his understanding of international politics, though.
Oh, absolutely.
He's leveraging global events to India's advantage.
He's not just a freedom fighter, he's a strategic thinker.
Always looking for ways to weaken the British Empire.
And this eventually leads him to Southeast Asia.
And the formation of the Indian National Army in 1942, the INA.
Composed mainly of Indian soldiers captured by the Japanese.
The INA, with their slogan, Chalo Delhi.
Aiming to liberate India through direct military action.
It was a radical departure from the Congress's nonviolent approach.
Shows Bose's belief in armed struggle.
And then there's the Azad Hind government, which he sets up in Singapore in 1943.
A bold declaration of India's sovereignty, even though it was in exile.
It had its own army, currency, court system.
Not just symbolic, a real attempt to build the infrastructure of a free India.
And Bose made sure to include women in the fight for freedom.
Oh, absolutely. The Rani of Jhansi Regiment.
Entirely composed of women soldiers.
A testament to his progressive vision.
And then the mystery surrounding his death in 1945.
whether you believe he actually died then or not.
It adds another layer of intrigue to his story.
His death, or at least the mystery of it, cemented his status as a legend.
Now let's talk about Rash Behari Bose.
Okay.
Not as well known as Subhas.
Right.
But his contributions are just as important.
Absolutely.
His story takes us back to the early 20th century.
A time of revolutionary fervor and rising nationalist sentiment.
He was involved in revolutionary activities from a young age.
Born in Bengal in 1886,
Oh, yeah.
he was part of the Alipore bomb case in 1908.
And the attempt to assassinate Viceroy Hardinge in 1912.
Those were dangerous times to be a revolutionary.
These events, especially the Alipore bomb case,
They brought the issue of Indian resistance right to the forefront of British attention.
the Ghadar movement had a huge impact on him too.
That transnational movement aiming to overthrow British rule through armed rebellion.
It showed him the importance of international networks.
And securing support from outside India.
And then he makes a bold move.
What's that?
He flees India in 1915 and seeks refuge in Japan.
Wow, that's a significant decision.
It shows his understanding of geopolitics.
And his willingness to form alliances with countries who could help India.
He wasn't alone in this thinking.
Just like Subhas Bose would later do.
Exactly. And in 1924, he establishes the Indian Independence League,
The IRA, based in Japan.
creating a platform to mobilize support for Indian independence on foreign soil.
Laying the groundwork for the future Indian National Army.
It's incredible how these two individuals
Both with the same last name.
end up on these parallel paths
United by their commitment to India's freedom.
and their belief in international alliances.
And their paths actually crossed in 1924.
Oh, really?
Rash Behari Bose and Subhas Chandra Bose met in Japan thanks to Veer Savarkar.
It's like a secret society of freedom fighters.
Operating across borders, sharing strategies and resources.
A few years later, in 1942, Rash Behari Bose takes another big step.
What's that?
He forms the Azad Hind Fauj, the Indian National Army.
Initially led by Captain Rohan Singh.
It may have been smaller than the INA that Subhas Bose would later lead,
Right.
but it's still incredibly significant.
It was the first concrete step towards a real organized Indian army fighting for independence.
It showed the growing influence of Japanese support, too.
It set the stage for a remarkable moment in the freedom struggle.
And that is
The handing over of the INA's leadership from Rash Behari Bose to Subhas Chandra Bose.
now this is where it gets really interesting.
So in 1943, Rash Behari Bose decides to hand over control of the INA to Subhas Chandra Bose.
It must have been a tough call.
Oh, absolutely.
After putting so much work into building the organization.
Years of dedication.
Why would he just step aside like that?
It shows incredible foresight, you know?
Yeah.
He understood what the movement needed at that point. He saw that Subhas Bose, with his charisma and those international connections,
Yeah.
and his powerful way with words,
Boy, absolutely.
he could take the INA further.
It's like passing the torch.
Exactly. He knew Subhas could ignite a bigger flame.
So we've got these two amazing leaders, both dedicated to India's freedom, but with totally different approaches.
And different ideologies.
This is super important for anyone prepping for the UPSC.
Oh, absolutely.
Those contrasting approaches, they often come up in essay questions.
And you need to understand the nuances.
Okay, so let's break it down. First, their views on violence,
Right. Gandhi was all about nonviolent resistance
the power of truth.
and moral persuasion,
His Satyagraha philosophy had a global impact.
inspiring movements all over the world.
Subhas Bose, though, he respected Gandhi's ideals,
Of course.
but he also believed that armed struggle was necessary.
He was a pragmatist.
He argued the British wouldn't give up control without a fight.
That's a fundamental difference right there.
It also shaped their views on alliances, didn't it?
Absolutely.
Gandhi rejected any collaboration with the Axis powers during World War II.
He wanted to stay morally above the conflict.
He saw it as a clash of empires, and India should stay out of it.
Shows his unwavering principles.
And faith in nonviolence.
Subhas Bose saw it differently.
He did.
He thought aligning with the Axis powers could weaken the British.
And speed up India's independence.
He was thinking strategically.
A classic case of the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
But it wasn't just tactics.
Right.
Their views on violence shaped how they saw an independent India. Oh, interesting.
Gandhi imagined a decentralized India with self-sufficient villages at its core.
A return to a simpler way of life.
His Gram Swaraj vision, where communities manage their own affairs.
Promoting social harmony and economic justice.
Subhas Bose, on the other hand,
Yeah.
he wanted a modern, industrialized India.
With a strong central government.
driving progress and development.
So a more top-down approach.
He saw industrialization as the key to ending poverty.
Interesting.
Their differences also showed in how they viewed the caste system.
Oh, right.
Gandhi opposed untouchability,
Absolutely.
but still believed in the Varna system.
The four traditional classes. He thought it could work if it wasn't discriminatory.
It was a controversial stance.
Even back then.
Subhas Bose completely rejected the caste system.
He wanted a truly equal society.
And supported intercaste marriages to break down those barriers.
Much more radical thinking.
And then there's their views on the military.
Gandhi, the pacifist.
He opposed militarism, believed in minimal force.
Violence is a last resort. Subhas Bose, well, he formed the INA.
He definitely believed in military discipline.
He saw it as essential for a newly independent India.
Two very different perspectives.
Gandhi saw the military as an instrument of violence.
And Bose saw it as a symbol of strength and unity.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
So we've talked about two leaders, both deeply committed to India's freedom.
But with fundamentally different visions.
The takeaway for UPSC folks is this. You need to understand those differences.
How those differences played out in their actions and strategies.
And how they shaped the freedom struggle.
You got to remember the historical context, too.
These were extraordinary times.
Bold decisions were needed.
Understanding the complexities, the motivations behind their choices.
That's what'll help you write strong, insightful answers on your exam.
Now, let's look closer at Subhas Bose's escape from India in 1941.
Okay.
It's often romanticized.
But it's worth examining its strategic implications.
His escape from house arrest in Calcutta was carefully planned.
And daringly executed.
He disguised himself.
Traveled through dangerous territory.
And relied on a network of supporters.
To evade British intelligence.
It shows his resourcefulness.
And his ability to plan ahead.
He had a destination, a goal in mind.
He wanted to reach Germany and get their support.
This wasn't just about personal freedom.
It was a calculated geopolitical move.
A high-stakes game.
But there were risks, too.
He was already a prominent figure.
This made him a fugitive.
He knew the consequences if he were caught.
But his escape did more than just get him support.
It captured the imagination of Indians everywhere.
It became a symbol of resistance.
He became a mythical figure.
A hero who defied the British Empire.
That narrative of defiance was powerful.
It galvanized support for the movement.
Both in India and abroad.
It resonated with people who wanted a faster pace of change.
It showed them a more radical approach was possible.
His escape was a turning point.
Not just for him, but for the whole freedom struggle.
It shifted things.
Emboldened revolutionaries.
And set the stage for the INA.
So for UPSC aspirants, analyzing this event goes beyond the details of the escape.
You need to understand its impact on the Indian people.
The strategic implications.
And its role in shaping the freedom struggle.
Subhas Bose reaches Germany, gets their support.
And then he sets his sights on Southeast Asia.
Where he'll eventually lead the Indian National Army.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Especially for our UPSC folks.
The INA was unique.
It was an army made up of Indian soldiers captured by the Japanese in World War II.
They switched sides.
And fought against their former captor.
For their homeland.
That's incredible.
They were driven by patriotism.
And belief in Bose's leadership.
They were fighting for their future.
The INA, with their Chalo Delhi slogan.
They launched a daring campaign in 1944.
Trying to liberate India.
They marched towards Imphal and Kohima.
Fierce battles with British and Allied forces.
It ultimately failed.
Due to logistical challenges, disease.
And the Japanese surrender.
But it had an impact.
It boosted morale.
Both for the British and the Indian people.
The INA's fight showed that Indians were willing to fight for their independence.
It challenged British authority.
Even in defeat, they became a symbol of resistance.
For UPSC preparation, understanding the INA is crucial.
Don't just memorize dates in battle.
Grasp the significance of their actions.
Their impact on India.
And their place in the freedom struggle.
Their actions affected the Indian National Congress, too.
Oh, how so?
The British could no longer assume India's loyalty.
It's like the INA, even in losing...
They had shaken British power.
Exposed its weaknesses.
And lit a fire that would lead to the end of colonial rule.
And then there's the Azad Hind government.
Set up by Subhas Bose in Singapore in 1943.
More than just symbolic.
It was a declaration of India's right to self-determination.
They were building an independent nation.
It had its own currency, stamps, even a court system.
It showed Indians what was possible.
And we can't forget the Rani of Jhansi Regiment.
Made up entirely of women soldiers.
That was groundbreaking.
They received military training.
Challenged traditional roles.
They weren't just in support roles,
They were fighting right alongside the men.
demanding a place at the forefront of the struggle.
It was a powerful symbol for women all over India
It inspired them to break free from societal constraints.
and demand equality in all aspects of life,
The INA, the Azad Hind government, the Rani of Jhansi Regiment,
all led by Subhas Bose.
it shows his vision
His ability to inspire.
and his dedication to India's independence.
These are crucial aspects of the freedom struggle for those studying for the UPSC.
It's not just about names and dates.
Understand the significance
The impact.
and their contribution to India's journey to independence.
We've covered a lot today.
We have
Two incredible leaders.
Subhas Chandra Bose and Rash Behari Bose.
Their different approaches to freedom
Their daring actions.
and their impact on India's fight.
We looked at the freedom movement's complexity,
The debates, the ideologies,
the roles of the INA and the Azad Hind government,
a journey through a pivotal time in India's history.
with its challenges and triumphs.
This isn't just history.
It's about understanding how modern India came to be
The challenges our leaders faced.
and their visions for the nation.
As we move to the last part of our deep dive,
Okay.
think about these stories.
Explore further.
Question assumptions.
Develop your own informed views on this crucial period.
It's amazing how both of these guys
With the same last name, even.
ended up being so important to India's destiny.
They really show how many different paths there were in the freedom struggle.
It wasn't just one big movement, was
Not at all. There was nonviolent resistance,
revolutionary acts,
analytical strategy.
international alliances,
It was a whole tapestry.
and every thread led to India's independence.
It's a story with so much going on.
So complex, but inspiring too.
Speaking of inspiration, the government created an award to recognize that spirit of service.
Oh yeah, I remember reading about that.
The Subhas Chandra Bose Aapda Prabandhan Puraskar.
It honors those who are doing amazing work in disaster management.
Such an important field.
It takes real courage and dedication.
Putting others first.
They announce the award each year on January 23rd,
That's right.
and it comes with a cash prize and a certificate.
A fitting tribute to Subhas Bose.
He was all about action and leadership.
Qualities you need in disaster management.
So it's not just about remembering history,
It's about carrying on the legacy of these leaders.
recognizing those who embody their spirit.
For our listeners, especially those getting ready for the UPSC,
It's worth paying attention to.
understanding what the award represents.
It shows a deeper understanding of those values,
The values that were so important in the freedom struggle.
connecting the past to the present.
Seeing how these legacies still influence India today.
Okay, so as we wrap up our deep dive,
Into the lives of Subhas Chandra Bose and Rash Behari Bose.
what are the key things to remember?
Both of them were totally dedicated to India's freedom.
Different paths, different methods.
But the same goal, a free India.
Their contrasting approaches are important too.
It shows the range of beliefs within the movement.
It wasn't just everyone on the same page.
No, there were debates and disagreements.
And lastly, these stories remind us that history is complicated,
It's not always clear-cut.
full of contradictions.
Moral dilemmas.
These aren't just stories about heroes and villains
They're about real people.
facing incredible situations,
Making tough decisions.
dealing with the weight of history.
And for those prepping for the UPSC, that's what matters.
Don't just memorize the facts.
You need to think critically.
Analyze motivations.
Understand the content.
Be able to explain the nuances of these events.
Exactly.
So, as we end our deep dive,
Okay.
I want to ask our listeners something.
What's that?
What part of these stories stood out to you?
What made you curious?
What else would you like to know about the INA, the Azad Hind government, or the roles of these leaders?
History is a conversation. Keep asking questions. Keep exploring.
That's the best way to honor their legacies.
If you enjoyed this deep dive,
Don't forget to hit that subscribe button.
and give us a like.
It helps others find the show.
And for those who want more,
All the info for this deep dive came from the Press Information Bureau,
the PIB.
a great resource, especially for those studying for competitive exams.
Look at this.
Until next time, keep learning, keep exploring, and keep that spirit of Parakram alive.